Hi fam, it's Dylan's mum Deborah. This is Dyl Friends.
Oh my God, we've killed Michael Jordan's dad.
I won the first Brownlow. The problem with that was I wanted it again.
Hey Jared, delete the tweet.
No, we're not here to break news.
This is an exclusive.
It's so silly looking back on for me because I remember just feeling like I'm not needed.
I couldn't, in my wildest of dreams, imagine that we would win the flag at the end of the year.
Damo's a lot funnier than people give him credit for.
Hugely funny.
But Andrew, a little message came across his phone and it was, give Job his Brownlow back.
Josh Fraser.
Dyl.
Hello. How are you, mate?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
Yeah, really well. Very good to catch up with you, mate. It feels like not long ago we were sort of sitting in under the gym there. You were telling me that I was starting on the pine in the VFL coming on the weekend, but many good memories. So always absolutely love working with you, mate. So it's an honour to be here.
Mate, it's great to be here. And I have to say off the bat, mate, how, without sounding too old, how incredibly proud I am of you and what you've been able to achieve post-footy. I know we're probably going to talk a lot of footy, mate, but what you've been able to do post-footy and what you've set up here is amazing. So it's great to be here.
Thank you, mate. Genuinely as well. Not that it's a love fest and we might make out later, but wouldn't be in the position I am without good mentors like yourself, mate. I'm very envious of those Collingwood Magpies that get to spend a lot of time with you because one of the absolute greats, and I will say, genuinely one of the best coaches I've worked with. I think your level of understanding of relationships, which is a word that gets thrown around a lot in coaching, and I don't necessarily like it, but the way that you can interact with players at every level that have done everything, and I suppose through your own experiences of playing and your own successes and I suppose hardships and things that you've experienced in the game, I don't think many others can sort of emulate those relationships like you can.
Well, I appreciate the feedback, mate. It's it is something that I guess if I was to talk about who I am as a coach, it's something that I feel pretty strongly about, the relationship side of it. But I am with you because relationships get thrown out a lot in coaching speak. But for me, it's the depth of the relationship. And I think one of the things that when I moved into coaching I wanted to do was, number one, not forget how hard the game is to play. I think that's really important. Even now it frustrates me listening to football or watching football with the experts who played the game. The disconnect between, who they were as players and what they see and what they commentate on. The game's incredibly hard. And also wanted to have enough self-awareness to know that, as a player, I had my struggles as well. And if I could use those experiences to help other young players or any players for that matter, that was the coach I wanted to be. So, when you get back to relationships, I think being able to share your own experiences, show some vulnerability, I think that builds the depth of relationship. And then when you have to have harder conversations, it becomes a lot easier. So, relationships is clearly a big part of coaching, tied into the self-awareness and I think ability to understand how difficult this game is to play.
We'll chat through, all that experience and stuff and jump around today a lot. But can you give us just I suppose, since getting into AFL coaching, your last sort of trajectory, years of like Carlton, back to out of the game with COVID, Preston Bullants, Collingwood. How did that all fare for you? Because it's been a challenging period with obviously the pandemic involved in there as well.
Yeah, it's challenging for the game and a lot of individuals within it. So for me, I started my AFL coaching journey on the Gold Coast. So coached up there for 2 years, coached their NEFL side, worked in development. And I've had my philosophy around coaching has been I've wanted to consolidate whatever role I'm in at the time. So I wanted to build my coaching CV, if you like, through development and through the experience of coaching my own team. So starting off at the Gold Coast was a great experience, really challenging up there as well for different reasons. And then as a family, we decided to move back to Melbourne. And that was somewhat scary in a sense that I was coming back to nothing. So didn't have a job lined up, only been in the system for a couple of years. And again, fortunate enough to have a conversation with Bolts and go for a job at the Blues, of which you were a part of that club at that time. So at Carlton for 5 years, working as a VFL coach and in development, doing sort of each line, so backs, forwards and mids. Again, a chance to consolidate those roles, which I really enjoyed. And as you know better than anyone, mate, the club was going through a really transformational period with the list and different things. So the challenges around that were real. But for a young coach, the learnings out of that were significant. And then COVID hit, as we know. So so COVID hit. I sat out a year of football, and throughout that COVID time. So again, my role at Carlton was coaching the VFL, and we had an alignment with the Preston Football Club, Bullants, as you well know. So that alignment dissolved. That was part of my role became redundant. That alignment dissolved. So effectively, I was out of a job for 12 months, and during that time, having a lot of time on my hands. Having built some strong relationships with people at Preston. And that was one of the things when I got to Carlton in this alignment. I didn't want to be just a Carlton person. I wanted to learn more about Preston. I wanted to get to know the people at Preston. I wanted to work closely with them. I wanted to get the whole experience. And I guess because of those relationships, we started a discussion, could we keep the Preston Footy Club alive? Is that something that was achievable, possible? Probably the short answer at the time was no. It was going to be an uphill battle. But we thought, why not have a go at this? So a year out of footy, a year working with some incredible people, Stevie Papel, who you know well, Darren Bassett, who you know well, these guys that were attached to Preston, working closely with them. And what we did, we were able to get it to a stage where we were able to bring people back into the fold. So Steve and Nick came in and helped us, a really credible administrator called Bob Tregear came in and helped us. So long story short, we were able to get the club to a position where we could go and apply for a licence to come back as a standalone club. So that was a challenging period being unemployed out of the game, but in terms of a passion project and something that I became really invested in and learned a lot through, putting together strategic plans, putting together a business model, working with some of these great football people. It was an incredible experience. And then we got to the stage where we were granted a licence to come back as a standalone club, of which I had to make a decision because throughout this process there was never any guarantees, and I knew at some stage I had to get back to work, had to do something. So I started to spread my risk a little bit and interviewed for a couple of AFL jobs, interviewed for a couple of VAFA jobs, interviewed for a talent league pathway job, and sort of all coincided and came together at once where I had 3 or 4 options on the table, and I chose the Preston option, probably because of loyalty and that I'd gone through that whole process with some great people and I wanted to see it through at least for 12 months. Maybe foolishly too, because, remuneration-wise, it was a lot lower than what some of these other jobs were paying. I didn't know where Preston was going to be in 2, 3, 4 years' time. I didn't know if I'd missed an opportunity to get back into the AFL system. But what I did know was that I was so passionate about keeping the club alive and what we'd built that I wanted to take on that challenge of being part of it from the ground up. So 12 months in that chair, and then opportunity came up to interview for a head of development job at Collingwood, which I think it came through Bolt at the time and Nick Maxwell. So I didn't know Fly at all. So going through another interview process, which have you been through an interview process before?
Not for a coaching job.
No, it's intense.
No, I can imagine.
It's intense. But again, I think you just present yourself as authentic as you can, and if it's the right fit, it's the right fit. 2
questions. Well, you would have played against Fly, right, in the Grannies, which we'll talk about later.
Yeah.
Plenty of big moments there. It's so funny looking back at both those teams and the people that have gone on to work in AFL. Success brings, obviously a lot of coaches and administrators out of those times. Where do you think, through that time of leaving the game, doing the stuff with Preston, how do you think that developed you as a coach, like from when you were at Carlton to then when you were at Collingwood? Did it give you another level of understanding?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So again, I've had this philosophy with my coaching of I've wanted to coach my own team and I've wanted to build my coaching CV through development. Yeah. And coaching a standalone club from the ground up is A, it's unique, it doesn't happen really. And B, there's so many experiences within that where you get to test your coaching philosophies, you get to test your own values, things like putting together a football department, so
building your team around
a team around you. So hiring people, going through interview process. As silly as it sounds, things like for the best part of 3 or 4 months, I was taking our jumpers home and washing them at home. So you're getting the rawest of raw experiences within a footy club. And what it does, I think, is it develops more understanding and empathy and appreciation for the people that do those roles. Because when we brought someone in to look after our property, having done it myself, I couldn't thank Grant, it was who was doing it. I couldn't thank him enough because I understood the work behind that. So I think it's just an experience that unless you're in that chair and you're going and meeting council about getting lighting upgrades, you're trying to find, you're on the phone trying to find a practice match partner for pre-season. You're dealing with local clubs around selection and what that looks like. There's just so many experiences that you don't get unless you're in that position, and it forces you to learn quickly and get some things wrong, but also learn from that and be better for it.
It's huge. I suppose, with the role you're doing at the moment, your CV and what you're building, do you have goals to become a senior AFL coach?
Yeah, I'm ambitious, and I believe I could do it. I believe I could do it, and I think there's a lot of capable coaches out there that could do it. I'm also realistic around this. Sometimes you need an opportunity to get in front of a club and present yourself. But my thing has been, again, is to continue to develop myself the whole way through. And if an opportunity came up to present for a job, be ready to do that. Yeah. And that's the space I'm in at the moment. I think having coached your own side, that sets you up better than anything else to be a senior coach. And then I think it comes back to the experiences you've had around that, what type of coach you are, and being a really, really strong leader and the right type of leader for whatever club's looking for a senior coach. But again, is it something I want to invest the next 20 years of my life in to be? Probably not. But there's a window of time where I think that this is something I want to pursue.
Bloody oath. The point you made earlier around as well, like building the administration around you, is something that I reflect on so much now, being at, I suppose, Carlton at the time of that unsettled period. And, I refer to this moment a bit, but I really do think it's a massive part, even having my own business now, is how important not just the football department is, but administration, the people you surround your team, and being that one team, one dream, aligned on a vision matters. And I think, not to talk ill of Carlton at that period, and I think it's well documented what it was like there, but it was like board, sack the coach, sack the CEO, sack the president, new board, sack the coach. And it was just a continual spiral of those things. And as you mentioned, putting a team together, Isaac Smith spoke about it on the pod, is like, he made his decision on the next team he'd go to, on the stability of that football club. That's why he went to Geelong. Yep. Other teams are offering more money. But to go somewhere where you know that they're going to stick together and it's a good business is really important. Yeah,
it's a great point, Dyl. And people speak a lot about culture. Well, culture's people. It's the quality of people you bring in. And again, this comes from leadership at the top. So I think leadership is so important within any organisation, but within a footy club specifically, because you've got to have a leader that's really clear on the direction of the club. You've got to have a leader that has a healthy ego, but not one that's overbearing. So you can give autonomy to your people to do their jobs and do them well and support them. But you said the word before, alignment. I think it's having clear alignment and everyone buying in. And the great thing about Collingwood, and there's some timing behind this too, don't get me wrong. I mean, we're in a situation where our best players are playing career best footy. Our older players are playing career best footy. And they haven't fluked that because they've put a lot of work in. But that's significant in where we're at the moment. And it's giving us a chance to develop our young talent underneath. So there is some timing involved in all of that. But what we do have the Pies is an environment that's very consistent. It's an environment where, and Fly said this before, you'd turn up on a Monday, you wouldn't know if we won or lost.
Can you honestly say that? Like, as in, I'm not questioning it, but I just never experienced an environment like that.
Yeah, so again, I would say that last year wasn't a season that went to plan for us, but I felt that weekly that
you weren't stepping on eggshells walking around.
No, yeah, no. So it's a get to work mentality. So you win by 5 goals, turn up Monday, let's get to work, let's get better. Lose by 5 goals, process is the same. Now, there are certainly environments where that can be tested. But again, I think it comes back to leadership, really good leadership, having a calmness about what you're doing. And you would have felt this at different times. You can sense when your leaders are on edge and there's more urgency behind them, and that puts everyone else on edge and with more urgency. So, you're spot on, mate. Having great people, good autonomy in their roles, and having good leadership.
Before we talk about the Mighty Pies this season, because it's huge, and then we get into a bit more of your journey as a player as well. A moment I've actually banned myself from continuing to tell this fucking story. I actually almost hate it now because I've told it that many times, but it was a pivotal point in my life, and you're actually a part of it. So I don't know if you remember. Have you heard me talk about this before?
Oh, I don't think so.
Okay. So it might be interesting to get your point of view on this, but we're like towards as a player, and you might see players like this a lot. I'm not sure if you do, but when it was sort of the end of my time at Carlton, and I think I sort of could feel that coming to an end, and I think players can get very like jaded and frustrated, and all these things are sort of happening. You go into a bit more like of a poor me mentality, and you really internalise a lot of things. And I don't have the answer to how to break out of that, but sometimes you just need to be told things so many times until it clicks with you, it doesn't click. And curious to know if you've been in that position as well yourself, like I'm sure a lot of players have. But there was a time when Bolts grabbed me and you, and we went and had a coffee near the cafeteria there, and I just remember sitting there, you two were on the couch, and I was sitting there by myself and asking me about how the club's going, and I was sort of just like panning along with it. And then, long story short, got to the end, and I was like, no, you know what, like, club's shit, like, no one's happy, you're playing the wrong guys, you're doing this, you're doing that. And Bolt sort of, he'd sort of reverse, just fucking rolled me in, and then he just said, mate, why are they saying these things? Yeah. He says, it's because you're letting them say it to you. Like, you're obviously allowing these things to happen. You're internalising. He's like, is Patrick Cripps saying these things? No. Is Mark Murphy saying these things? No. And, you know, I realised that I was hanging around or listening and letting infiltrate my mind in those parts. And it was like the biggest, to this day, the biggest punch in the face. Like, just, I actually felt something like hit me. Yeah. And it was just like, mate, you're a fucking idiot. Like, you've got to snap out of this shit because the world's not against you.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
I do. Yeah, I do. Yeah, now that you've brought that up, I do remember that. Not an easy situation either, Dyl, to be in. So you think about the position you were in as a player at that time. There are so many players in that position. Weekly, really, fighting for selection, wanting to know why. And sometimes it's hard to see the reality of any situation. So we've got a lot of young guys at the moment are looking for opportunity. Well, the reality is there's players playing AFL that are just playing great footy. So, you've got to keep biding your time. And then there's, scenarios where you might have half a dozen players who are doing what you're saying, bringing a negative light or negative context to everything, which doesn't help, but it's easy to get consumed in that. And I reckon as a player, I lived a bit of that too. I think it's so easy to get caught up in that. And it doesn't make you a bad person or doesn't make you wrong in that moment. It just means that sometimes you have to go through that to come out the other side of it like you have and go, shit, I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be the one that's A, listening to it, B, feeding that sort of energy because I can control that. But it's a bloody tough situation to be in.
What, I'm curious with, your role, because that is dealing with a lot of those players.
Yeah.
So how, as someone that maybe is experiencing that themselves, so say they're in it or they've got someone in their life that's in that position.
Yeah.
Will you actively pull them out of it? Do you try and time that? Like, how are the conversations had these days? Like, do you have those conversations a lot with sort of guys, or is it waiting for the right moment to be able to do that?
I think we've got better as an industry of not waiting till it builds up to that point to have the conversation. I think it's more consistent now. And it's so boring to talk about, but we're so process driven. So if you sense, and this happens quite regularly, a player's quite frustrated with their own performance from a weekend or whatever it might look like, selection or so you come back to A, what can you control? B, do you need to have a conversation with coach or someone else to get some clarity and get some things off your chest? So you sort of work through steps to prevent the situation that you found yourself in, which was not uncommon 5-10 years ago. But I think we've got better at it now, and there's there's far more, I say support, but there's a lot more levers to pull for players now to get the answers they need probably quicker than what some did in the past. But absolutely, mate, you've got to, as a coach, you've got to be dialed into that. And it comes back to your environment. It comes back to who are we as a football club? What do we want to promote? And what do we want to challenge? And that's how we operate pretty consistently.
It's somewhat, a part of competitive sport too, right? Like, I don't know if you'll ever be able to get rid of it completely because it's just human nature. Like I remember still playing twos and hoping blokes break their legs. Now, I'm not thinking of them like hating them. Yeah. I'm just hoping for an opportunity. And you say that out loud now, it's almost sick. But in your head, you just don't realise what it is. Like, what was that? You've been through those situations yourself. In 2010, you don't get to play in a grand final. Are you mature enough at that stage to deal with it, or is there still stuff like that creeping through?
No, I wasn't.
Yeah.
I wasn't. And look, you said it before, you can internalise a lot. And I think the deeper you internalise, the more challenging it can be to understand the perspective of things as well. So it becomes so much about you that you can't see the why. Now, 2010, as an example, I found was incredibly difficult for me. And so there's a lot that goes into that in terms of my playing career. One was being a number one pick. I was looking for something to validate being a number one pick. And it wasn't best and fairest and it wasn't All-Australian. So I'm going, I need to be a premiership player. That's how I thought through that, rightly or wrongly. So I was desperate to play in a flag. Missed out on 02 and 03. Saw some great players miss out altogether. So playing in a premiership for me was a bit of validation for my career because when I finished playing, I've probably felt unfulfilled as a player. That's a regret I have. I would have done things differently. It doesn't consume me, but that is a regret I have as a player. And then when you can't...
Sorry, what do you mean regret? Like, as in you have regret about the way you felt about your career or what transpired in the career?
I have regret about finishing my career and feeling unfulfilled.
Yeah.
And in hindsight, would have done things differently.
So you actually would have changed things?
Yeah, I would have.
What would you have changed? What was the...
Well, I think part of it too is knowing that it was a different game at that time.
Well, and also you don't know what you know till you know it, in a sense.
It's just maturing, mate.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to say I've got some regrets.
Yeah.
People that say I've got no regrets, well, what do you mean you got no regrets?
Oh, well, we all got regrets.
So you got to have regrets. They don't consume me.
Yeah.
But what I do with that is, again, I use it in my coaching. So it's, I didn't do this. I wish I had done that. This player over here could use some advice around it.
Yeah.
So again, probably without skipping too far ahead, I don't come from the coaching perspective of I did this.
Yeah.
I come from the coaching perspective of I wish I had done this.
Yeah.
Try this. Does this work for you? But 2010 was challenging. I think that I could have been a better teammate at that time. Could have been a better person to be around. I was incredibly happy, and this would be hard for some people, but I was incredibly happy for everyone involved in that moment. I was. But then there's always this little part of you that goes, I missed out. So I've, again, come to reason with that over time, and it didn't take me too long because you can move on pretty quickly. But, that was just some learning for me. And I don't know, your time in footy, did you feel a similar way? Did you feel unfulfilled? Did you feel like you missed out on opportunity, or I don't know how it sits with you?
Yeah, I think you've actually articulated it a lot better than I would, because I would say, I've definitely said in the past that I have no regrets. I definitely have regrets, but I'm not upset that I have them, if that makes exactly what you've said. Like, it's helped me in the next phase. And you can almost rob yourself of those lessons and ultimately you don't get them, but fucking oath I have regrets. Like, would I have done things differently? Oh, I don't know, because I like where I'm at now, but there's things I could have done 100% differently. If I had this head on my shoulders that I had as an 18-year-old, probably have 6 Brownlows, to be honest. No, I wouldn't. But it's
6 listeds.
Yeah, exactly. That's the VFL best and fairest for all those out there playing home. That's very cheeky. I think I 100% do things differently. But again, it's like you got to use it into the next thing. You just got to move in and get it done.
Yeah, when I say regrets, it's like if someone said you can have 5 years of your career over knowing what you know now,
Yeah.
of course you'd do it differently.
I'll try it again.
Yeah. You
I basically did it. I did that actually at Richmond Centrals the other day. I was playing in the six, and it was a nice feeling. I think I felt like how Scott Pendlebury and Still Sidebottom sort of feel at their age now, having a kick and just knowing what they know.
Mate, it's incredible. So our pre-game at the MCG, like if you walked into our rooms pre-game, you would think it's like a nightclub.
Yeah.
The way the boys are so relaxed and like I look at it and go, that was
I'd
never
be spewing
me.
up in the toilet.
That was never me.
Yeah.
That was never. But they go out and they can perform. And again, Fly's done an amazing job at creating this environment where it's relaxed professionalism, but it's play to your strengths, have fun, smile, celebrate, and it works.
What speaking of Collingwood at the moment, like that, it's amazing how I suppose the footy is being played. A lot's being made of obviously the older guys, but the younger guys are just as good in what's coming through. Who do you look to? I suppose there's so many, but maybe give us a couple because I know Ned Long is a really great example of someone actually that you got him back to Collingwood VFL, right?
Yeah,
do you remind the club of that very often?
No, I don't.
Is there any signing bonuses for like getting people into the club?
There's plenty of people wanting to take credit for.
You know who takes
Ned?
more credit than anyone? Adam Baldwin, who he's a co-worker, co-owner of the business with me. He coached the twos at Melbourne Grammar. And he literally, all he talks about is Ned Long at the start of the year. I was like, mate, Ned Long's shit. Don't worry about it. Move on. Ned Long has turned into a very, very good player.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he got delisted from Hawthorn.
Yep.
We wanted to put some experience and probably somewhat of his skill set in our VFL team. I'm thinking if we sign Ned Long...
You were thinking sign him up, yeah.
Well, I'm thinking sign Ned Long for VFL because he's going to make some of these other younger players around him better because he's a contest beast. He works incredibly hard.
Big boy, very erect.
Mate,
the way he runs.
He is. He's a big boy.
He's very full-blooded, as I like it.
It's a good way to put it. So the thing I didn't know about Longy was how good a person he was. Like he's a great person. So comes into the VFL program, given an opportunity to do some AFL preseason sessions, and pretty quickly just endears himself to everyone for a variety of reasons. But his work ethic was the one thing. But again, it's another example of I don't say timing, but you bring Longy in, and in our system he plays to his strengths, and he's so valued because of that.
Yeah.
Now, kicking's probably not his one wood. So being at the Hawks or a kicking team, and it probably wasn't going to work for him. But you bring him into Collingwood, and what he does around contest and clearance and work rate, he makes others around him better. He's just been a huge pickup for us.
Mate, win the ball, put your head over it and give it to the Dacos boys, and the rest sort of, I don't want to give you game plan out, but I think it's that's basically it.
Pretty much it, mate.
Yeah, pretty much. Who else at Collingwood do you think you love like working with, even young guys, old guys? Who do you sort of marvel at? And even, you played a lot of footy with Pendlebury and Sidebottom. Yeah. Does it amaze you how they've been able to keep consistent and continue improving at the age they're at?
Yeah, it doesn't amaze me only because you see day to day what they do. So that their work rate is incredible and their habits are incredible. So they're great role models for a lot of our players, not just our younger players. But there too, I think Darcy Cameron's been enormous. I still think he's a bit underrated outside of our footy club.
Mate, you said you're coaching he was playing NEFL at footy. The Swans.
Yeah. But you look at durability, his ability to mark the ball. He prepares and trains really hard. He's a terrific story. You could go through so many players. From a younger player perspective, like I was really excited, still am excited about Harvey Harrison. I think he's going to be a terrific player. Charlie Dean's a guy that's played a lot of VFL footy and playing high-level VFL footy at the moment. Reef McGuinness has gone through an injury, but he was starting to emerge as a player. We've got a couple of young rucks at the moment, Oscar Steen and Illaru Smith, who are looking good. And then you bring in, like Will Hayes has played a couple of games this year as well. So I'm leaving a lot of guys out unintentionally, but I'm quite excited about the youth of our club and the way they're tracking.
Yeah, it's remiss of us not to talk about the Dacos boys and just marvel at like sort of what they've been able to do. But up close, what's that been like watching their sort of development and jumping into like AFL the way they have?
They strike me as two kids growing up that had a footy in their hand the whole time.
Yeah.
That's how I go, why are they so good? Well, they work really hard. There's no doubt about that, but they're incredibly talented. And I think you can only have that when you just continue to have a football in your hand. And I think that was their journey growing up, and I think they've clearly had some great guidance from their dad. But they both work hard. Like, it's no secret, these players that we talk about, they've all got great work rates, an appetite to work, and they've built great habits, and that's complements their talent. I think both Nick and Josh have got versatility. They can play different roles, elite decision makers and ball users. In game day, I mean, hard to stop again because of their work rate.
One player that's incredibly fascinating, he's probably got his flowers this year as well, like Jack Crisp, the way he's sort of gone about it, like 100 and whatever games in a row. The durability, that's crazy. It's so interesting to think that Collingwood haven't seen a game without him. And you can see how hard he runs and how important he is on like score chains and score involvements and just everything really. But it's so interesting to think that they don't actually even know how important he is because he hasn't not been out there.
Yeah. Well, I think we do internally.
Yeah.
Like that's something that we do really well is highlight guys like Crispy and Lipinski and even Lockie Schultz. Like you watch Lockie Schultz's work rate game day.
Yeah.
The other one that's Timmy Membry's come in and he works incredibly hard.
Yeah. He's a good player.
He's an incredible worker. Jamie Elliott, I know you asked about Crispy, but I guess it's easy to group a lot of them together because I think they all bring similar traits.
A lot of good players.
We've got some great players that are getting the most out of themselves.
Huge. What's going back to sort of your career in itself as well? So number one pick out of Mansfield. I forgot you were from Mansfield. Did you ever get on the snowboard or?
No, I wasn't
You went to snowboard?
No, I wasn't. No, footy during the winter, mate.
During the winter. Yeah. Okay. Very cool.
Yeah.
What's I was looking up before. I have an obsession with this now that, like, I don't know why, but I just love thinking about when you've come in at like an 17, 18-year-old. And I was looking at your first year, which was 2000, so 99 draft, 2000 first year, and then looking at the playing list of guys that were sort of on the back end or just in that team at the time.
Yep.
It's just amazing reading some of these names. Like, obviously, there's some big Collingwood names like Presta Giacomo, Severio Rocker, Leon Davis, Mel Michael. So then he went to Brisbane after that. Nathan Buckley, Scott Burns, Shane O'Bree, Ricky Olorenshaw.
Yep.
Yeah, big Rick. A lot of and even Shane Watson. So I didn't even know you and Watto played together. Because Shane was at Carlton as well at the same time.
Well, we didn't play a lot together because he was at Williamstown. And I can say that because we often joke about it.
That's very good.
we often joke about it. One of the great men, Watto. He's a good man. So you won't mind me saying that.
It's a great gag. What are your memories of walking into Collingwood at that time? So was Mick coach? Mick was coaching?
Mick's first year. Yeah.
What was that? Yeah, what was it like at that period? Being into Collingwood, big club.
Yeah.
I still remember just the jumpers, grand final.
Surreal.
Yeah.
It was surreal. It was because growing up, all I wanted to do was play AFL footy.
Yeah.
It was a realisation of that dream. I reckon from memory, Nathan Buckley was the first person I met. So I think walking in. And he was walking in, and it was like, wow, this is pretty cool.
Did he give you much bucks? From his own admission, bit of a different person back then.
No, I think he was quite welcoming.
Good.
Yeah, quite. He wasn't probably quite sure who I was. Yeah, he was quite.
Thought you were the property steward.
He was quite welcoming. I don't know. I'd be keen to hear what your impressions were when you first got to the Blues, but it's your head spinning a lot. Yeah. There's a lot to take in. From memory, we weren't really eased into the pre-season.
Yeah.
So I think we were sort of straight into it pretty much from the get-go. But Leon Davis got drafted that draft, Benny Johnson. So a couple of guys that had gone on and had really good careers as well. But we were, again, we'd finished last. So we had a lot of work to do. So to be able to finish last and then pretty quickly make two grand finals, 02 and 03, is a fair effort. And I think Mick's on record as saying that 02 team was one that he's I'm going to paraphrase you, but I think in terms of respect levels, he had the most respect for, because he didn't think we were the most talented team, but we were a team in the sense of a word.
There's a compliment in there somewhere.
I think there was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there was. It's so yeah, it was again, we had a group of players that were terrific leaders taking the club forward. And we had some guys that, they moved on and made change with. But Scotty Burns, the Rocket Boys, Paul Acuria was an incredible worker. Obviously Bucks, and then Watto. When I saw Watto, he was working as hard as anyone.
What about like early days? Welcome to, I suppose, AFL moments. Not even necessarily in games, but pre-season camps back then or training sessions. Does anything stand out? Did you have Butters?
Yeah, I had Butters. Yeah,
like from that 99, was he? Yeah,
yeah. No, Butters came. We had a guy called Noel Duncan my first year, and I think Noel was maybe the first couple of years, and then Butters maybe 2001, 2002.
So high performance manager,
trainer.
Yeah.
The only welcome to the AFL moment I can distinctly remember was, so we'd play on a Saturday as an example, and on a Sunday morning for recovery. You can imagine what the Saturday night looked like in 2000.
Yeah.
So you turn
CQ
up,
drink cards. Sort
of
yeah. You wouldn't have lined up. You wouldn't have lined up.
Apparently. So you turn up Sunday morning and you're thinking, well, recovery is can be pretty casual in the spa and walk a few laps. We used to run the golf course, the 9-hole golf course down there in Yarra Bend. We used to run that, and on every hole we'd just wrestle for like a minute. This is the day after a game. So you do that. That was your recovery, and then you're back to the club and the ice bars, and you're out of there. So
who was behind that? Was that a Mick thing, or
I'm not sure. I think it was. I think it was a Noel thing. Yeah, or you'd be down to Kerford Road and jumping off the pier, swimming in. You do that 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
So recovery looks a lot different these days. Yeah.
Amazing. Throughout those grand final periods as well, the early ones. You kicked 3 in 02, was it, or 3 in?
3 in 02. Yeah, I played more forward in 02.
Yeah. Big, like playing against some of those names you think now as well. Like I was watching this game actually not long ago before the grand final. We were at the AFL festival there, and I was sitting with Paul Acuria and Justin Lepage, and we were talking through the games, and just seeing some of the people. Like for me, I would have been nearly 9 or 10 at that age, and like thinking of that's like my most biggest memory of footy is getting into footy, watching those Brisbane Collingwood games at the MCG on TV. Michael Voss, Lappin, Buckley, Fraser, everyone. Like it was just crazy.
They were an incredible side. Yeah. Like we ran into a pretty good team. But I think 02 I played on Leper. So I kicked 3 goals. Well, I can't say I've got bragging rights because they beat us.
Yeah, you still got them a bit. Because you working with Leper as well.
Yeah, so
you let him know a bit now.
Well, I don't know. He lets me know. He's one of the best.
He's quite happy with himself, Leper, isn't he?
Oh, well, yeah, you could say that. But he's a good fellow, Leper. He's a very funny man. But yeah, we played on each other so the grand finals were clearly big games, but we had some home and away games, and I think some actual finals themselves against Brisbane were massive games as well. We just had there was this rivalry at that time that was between the two clubs, and as you mentioned, like they had some amazing players. We had some amazing players too, but I think they batted a bit deeper, and they were just hard to stop. They were very hard to stop. I thought in 03 we were a better side, the home and away season. I thought we were the best team, but wiped off the park grand final day by 10 goals.
I love in footy thinking about it now, and all these names sort of popping into my head, but footy's such a small industry, isn't it? And you've been in it probably a lot longer than me, but like probably over half your life. You think about like playing with Shane Watson, you work with him at Carlton, you're teammates with Heath Scotland at Collingwood, then you end up being development coach when Heath was still there for a year or so?
No, I think he'd left.
He just left him, had you? Yeah, okay. But it's just so, infiltrated how like close those circles are.
Well, I remember when I was coming out of my playing days and I wanted to go into coaching, some of the best advice I got was, your networks and your relationships will be your best friend in a sense. And at the time, because I wouldn't say I'm a big networker. I don't,
Not handing out business cards?
I'm not handing out business cards, mate. But I can understand the advice at the time because you do. It's a it's a big industry, but you come across the same people a lot. So, and I think that's healthy and unhealthy in some ways. But fundamentally in footy, I don't know how you found. I think footy's full of good people. I really do. I think by and large, people within the footy network are pretty good people.
Yeah, for sure. And good people attract other good people, and that's how it works. Who would you say, maybe playing career and then coaching career, some of your favourite, most underrated, like teammates and then players you've coached?
Oh, that's a good question. So Paul Curio was underrated, I think, as a player. Shane O'Brien was underrated as a player. Tarkin Lockyer was underrated as a player. So they're a couple that come to mind. I wouldn't say Anthony Rocker was underrated, but he was probably underrated in the sense that I still believe his best football, when he was at the peak of his powers, I reckon his best football was the best football I'd seen.
Could you imagine him playing today? Like,
what's a running game today? So
yeah, true. But I feel like he'd still be able to move, and for how big he was, he was still incredibly athletic.
Mate, he would split packs, and then
you wouldn't want to sit in front of him.
Well, no, and he was actually a very good tap ruckman. Like he was a very good ruckman in his time, but could kick goals from anywhere. And a big man with a great presence. So he was. I think he was underrated. I'm just trying to think of some of the other players I played with.
You played with two sort of generations, I suppose, as well. Like you had the Prestige Comos and that early 2000s, and then you moved into obviously the 2010 sort of team as well, which is more your like Scott Pendlebury's, Daisy at his peak. Lee Brown, role player. Yeah,
he was. Played under 18 footy with Brownie for Vic Country.
There you go.
Good man.
Yeah.
But you're right. Like when you start to drag out those teams from, if you play for 10 years, you drag out the team from every year, and it changes obviously. But there's some really underrated players in and amongst all that. Scotty Burns, like he was tough and hard, and wasn't blessed with speed or anything like that, but just you find the footy. And then you go to the Suns and you see Gary Ablett Jr. play up close.
Hell yeah. What was the Gaz man like?
He was he just had this innate ability to A, find the ball, but B, do something with it 99% of the time. It put someone in a better position. I think he was one of the best inside 50 kicks I saw. His ability just to bring the forward onto the ball. But his balance and centre of gravity, he hit him and you couldn't get him off the ball. Not that I got close enough to hit him at training or anything, but he just had that natural way about him. And you see Tommy Lynch, who was there at the time, for a young player coming into the Suns, he was probably one of the hardest workers I've seen. So, there's been a lot of great players over the journey.
Speaking of Gary, we had Tom Hawkins on Footy and Friends the other day, and he was just reminiscing on some good times, and he said a lot of his good stories came from Nathan Ablett at the Cattery. Did you have
I
Nathan?
can believe that, yeah. Nath was definitely 1 year, maybe two.
Yeah.
Definitely one.
What was Nath like? I'm fascinated.
What was Nath like? Really, really nice fella.
Yeah.
Really nice fella. He was clearly not as talented as Gaz.
Yeah. Because some people say that he could have been, if he wanted to be, like could have been just as good or a different player.
Yeah. Look, he showed glimpses. He did. He did some stuff in Neeful footy. You go, geez, that was incredible. But just the inconsistency.
So did I, mate.
You did as well. So you're very similar. He was just inconsistent and he probably didn't love the training side of it as much. But there is some incredible stories from over the journey with Nath. I reckon there was a story one day I don't know if I was there at the time. I probably wasn't, but they were playing at Broadbeach, which was adjacent to a swimming pool.
Yeah, he told the same story.
I might get it. He was just swimming in the pool. Yeah. It's like, mate, we've got a game of footy.
It's amazing. I just love that. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Absolutely fantastic. Have you got any other teammates over your time that you just think, they were such a great character and you just reflect on? Like, I think that's now being out of the game, I miss the most is when you play sport, I don't think you surround yourself with people you wouldn't necessarily in life because you come together in a team. And I think some of those relationships that you get to make because you wouldn't necessarily interact with each other, are just the best.
It's funny. I did a sportsman's lunch at Point Cook a couple of weeks ago with Dane Swan.
Okay.
Now, so I played a lot of footy with Swanee, and we didn't operate in the same circles.
Yeah.
We probably weren't poles apart, but we didn't.
Yeah.
Our circles didn't cross that often. But I'm just sitting there listening to him tell stories, and I go, mate, I wish I'd have spent more time around you.
Yeah.
Like, it's incredibly funny. And I'm sure the stories he told, he's probably only half telling the truth in all of them. But he was a character. Again, I wouldn't encourage young players to follow his path because he worked and played equally as hard. But that Rat Pack at the time, they were full of some character and cheek.
Bloody oath. So post 2010 grand final, next year you went to Gold Coast.
That's right. Yeah.
So was that where was that decision around? Was it more so around opportunity to play? Was it then to transition into a coaching role? Was it like how did you?
I think it was made by the fact that Collingwood probably didn't want me anymore. So it was a pretty easy one.
Yeah.
I think it was heading that way.
Yeah.
Like it was heading that way where I needed to do something else. And there was a couple of opportunities, I think, whether they were real or not, there was a couple of opportunities to potentially stay in Melbourne.
Mm-hmm.
But I just
where were they? I love these what ifs.
Well, I think there was some St Kilda interest
Okay.
and some Hawthorn interest, I think. But when I say interest, it could have been very lukewarm.
Yeah.
But for me, it was getting out of Melbourne and doing something completely different. Yeah. And the other part to the decision-making for me was knowing that I wanted to move into coaching, go and experience a startup club and get everything you can out of that opportunity. So that was sort of made for me. I don't think there was any real discussions at the time with anyone around this is what I'm doing. There was no contract on the table from the Pies. I think Gold Coast had the ability to sign one sort of unrestricted free agent from each club. There's also a big myth around that because I didn't go up there on big money. Like I went up there on minimum chips, whereas some of the others clearly went up on big coin.
Those expansion clubs, I think they pay the top 10 players like a shit ton of money and then the other ones are just on.
Well, it was, I mean, we had Gaz commanded a fair salary, Carmichael Hunt at the time.
Yep.
Did
you play with Carmichael?
Yeah, play with Kay.
How was Big Carmichael?
I enjoyed my time with Kay. I thought he worked hard.
Yeah.
To be an AFL footballer, which earned him a lot of respect. So I thought he did everything he could for his end of the bargain.
How many years did he end up having there?
I want to say 3 or 4.
3, and then he went back and played.
I think he went to Japan for rugby. I'm probably getting this timeline wrong. Went to Japan or went to the Broncos. Yeah. So he sort of found his way back into rugby. Yeah. I believe he's coaching in Brisbane somewhere now in rugby. But, so there was Campbell Brown, there was Nathan Bock, there was Jared Brennan. So there's a lot of these guys took a fair bit of the salary. But I was up there on minimum chips to really get out of Melbourne and reset myself and freshen up and start to move into coaching.
Yeah, huge. Mate, it's just such a wide open question, and I suppose it's hard to answer, right? But if you're starting a team from scratch, as you said before, with like Preston, and say someone's out there that wants to get into coaching and they're wondering how to even do it, what's the first thing you actually do when developing a team as a coach? Like, is it, besides, say the team's there, is it like developing a ball movement strategy? Is it doing a defence first? Like, how do you actually, how do you actually do that? Like, how do you do that at Collingwood where the start of year you sit in a room and you go, this is how we're going to play this year?
Yeah.
Like, what happens?
Well, it comes back to the senior coach's philosophy on the game, whether it's we want to attack or we want to defend, and you sort of, in some ways, prioritise what you want.
Mm-hmm. And do you think the game, sorry jumping in now, but like back when, I suppose, we were playing, it was a lot about defence. Is it more the offence now, or is it still a bit of both?
So my belief, and this is not Collingwood's belief, my belief is the game's, I would say it's played from the inside out. I think contest gives you a chance to attack and defend.
So like centre clearances and hardball, is that what that is?
Yeah, so that's what that is. But then it's almost how you set yourself up around that to be able to do either or.
Got you.
So
for example, like say there's a loose ball, is a contest of like players coming in, someone wins a hardball get.
Yep.
Then it's like, all right, do you exit forward, do you exit back?
That's right.
How do you set up around?
Where are your numbers? Where are your bodies? if you've got 3 players going to the one ball,
Yeah.
and if you lose that contest, you lose what we call a bit of shape.
Yeah.
So I think you can attack off really strong defence, and you've got to still be able to defend in the modern game turnover as well. So it's prioritising a little bit of who you are as a coach. But again, maybe this is my development background, but fundamentals for me are still the most important thing in the game. I don't think it matters what your game plan is unless you can develop a really strong fundamental set.
Is there teams at the moment, say like the top 4 or 5, Collingwood, Brisbane, Geelong, Western Bulldogs, Hawthorn, I suppose are some of the better ones, that have really differing ways of playing? Like, who would you say the teams that are like on the either end of the scale of like how they play? Like Hawthorn's a lot of kicking and offense.
Yeah. Hawthorn's kicking offense. Brisbane are a little bit kick mark at times. There are teams that'll just are happy to take a contest and invest numbers there. Some teams are changing their profile a little bit of how they play. I think some of it depends on their list as well in terms of how they want to play the game. Some teams want to play really fast but can't defend the ground and get opened up. I don't think teams stray too far from each other. There's just some subtle differences. Yeah. And again, personnel plays a really big part in that. And I think the best teams have got an ability to play different ways. You might go out to play a certain way, but you got the lever you can pull where you go, no, we're going to go into this mode of ball movement for a while, or we're going to defend the ground this way, or whatever it looks like. I think they're the best teams, and usually that comes with having some good experience in your side. And
at the moment, you're obviously head of development. Were you coaching the VFL prior to stepping into? Yeah. So you've stepped into the forwards coaching while Scott Selwood takes a bit of time. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. So Scooter's away at the moment. Yeah. And so I've jumped into the forward line role. Yeah. Have you found that? And like, what does I think this is really interesting because I can't even remember myself. But like, what does a forward line coach do? What are you doing? Running patterns? Is it like? Yeah, it's you review the game from a forwards perspective. There might be specific things at training that you're doing with the forwards or with the team in ball movement. You're previewing the next week and setting the week up, and then obviously you've got the game day coaching as well. So it's a different workflow to what I've been used to in development, but I've picked it up pretty quickly, and I'm fortunate too that the forwards at Collingwood they're a great group. Like you've got Jamie Elliott and Brody Myercheck and Timmy Membry and Dan McStay's come back into the fold, and you got those high forwards, so Lachie Schultz and McCreary and Bobby Hill. So there's a really good group there. Scotty Selwood's done a great job with them, so I've come in trying to reinvent the wheel with them. I've really given them a lot of the ownership around what they want from me and what they want it to look like. And as I said, there's great experience in there where sometimes as a coach, it's almost all hands off a little bit, and these guys can run it. Without going too much into it as well, what do you look at game day? Like, what stats are you big on for forwards? Is it like 450 tackles or time in forward half? Or it's an interesting question, mate, because I understand the data in footy and the importance of it, but I'm a trust your eyes coach a bit and then reinforce with data. But it's often your ability to retain the ball in your front half. Each game's different again. So I think against the Hawks, we're able to take 18 marks inside 50, which is incredible. And that was just our ability to honour the lead up at times. So when you see a trend early in a game of numbers that are strong, you want to keep supporting that through messaging. But usually it's front half pressure, ground balls, those types of little metrics to support the way you want to play. Love it. Hey, Fraser, before we finish up, maybe being extremely generous with your time, I think it'd be remiss not to ask about, say, a young boy or girl's listening and they're wanting to get to the peak of their power in whatever sport it is. What have you seen, I suppose, over the last time at Collingwood or Carlton or Gold Coast about the best players and how they enter the system? Like, what are the traits that they have in common versus the ones that don't last as long? Fundamentals, so skill development, I don't think you can replace that. There is still examples of players coming into the AFL system drafted on, physical profiles that can't handball with their left hand or kick with their left foot. So I still think that the core of any game is the skill
acquisition, being able to shoot a basketball with the right technique or take a ground ball at AFL or whatever that looks like. So I'm a massive advocate for players investing time in that part of the game. And I've said this a lot during the podcast, but there's a work rate component to being successful. You've got to be willing to do the work and figure out what works for you too. I think self-assessing and reflecting and learning, it doesn't matter what age you are. I'm finding this with my young fella at the moment. The ability to have a conversation with Teddy about his game and even my daughter Emmy around their own games and them to articulate why they were frustrated, what they do differently. You sort of help them on that journey a little bit. So it's pretty cool to see that process with your own kids and then see them get some benefit, some nourishment from it by being able to do some work.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I think I echo your thoughts. I just think the one thing I wish I did as well was better is around the work rate is building an engine and a tank. And I think I've seen so many guys come into AFL, and whilst they might be lacking their skills and fundamentals, which once you get to an elite level, you're obviously going to really narrow in and get better at. Yeah. But the fitter you are, the better you can execute your skills, the better you can run out a game. Yeah. And even, for example, I would early in my career I'd miss kicks in games. I actually thought that I was actually always a skillful player, but I didn't have the fitness to execute them under duress.
It's a great point, mate.
And that was like the biggest thing. I was like, fucking hell, like if I just build my tank, I'm not going to be cooked. I can actually hit that kick. Yeah. It's nothing to do with like not being able to kick.
Yeah, I think it's a great point, and I probably should have linked the two together because I think the skill development part and then being able to execute your skills at a certain intensity and level, those things are critical. So I completely agree.
What's plans for the rest of the year, Fraser? What do you want to get out of it? What's your next little 12 months look like? And do you set goals? Like what's the...
Oh, not specifically. I'm actually can always want to try and improve myself. So I'm actually doing the leader program at the moment, which is
Luke Darcy.
Yeah, which has been
I'm going to jump in as well.
It's awesome, mate.
You can't talk about who's in your team, can you?
I don't think so. No,
okay.
I don't
Who is
think
it?
So. But it's been very cool. I've enjoyed it so far. So I'm sort of doing some stuff like that on the run. Yeah. Clearly, we've got some work to do at the Pies, and we want to continue to get better and try and set ourselves up for a real crack at it. I'm not sure what the off season looks like yet. But
do you do any like overseas sort of stuff? I know you're big on that with you love your NFL and whatnot.
Yeah, love NFL. So bit of a bucket list thing for me last year. Jordan Roughhead and myself went to Florida. And,
is this when we'll check? Because we're
we missed each other.
Yeah, but
you didn't get back to me.
Actually, no, it was not. No. I actually forgot about this. Now you've actually reminded me, you idiot. Last week, Mom, how's this? So I called Frase twice. Yep. No answer. So that's actually weird. I actually thought we had quite a good relationship, as hopefully you've discovered today. Didn't get him. I had to call him back again. Didn't even have my number saved. We'd been messaging like 3 months earlier.
So I explained this to you that I changed my phone over, and I'm actually not sure why your number didn't come up, because when you messaged me, I went back through and we had all the messages were there, but your name doesn't come up. So you rang me and I was on the...
Mate, that's my excuse I use to people, and it's absolute bullshit. So I know that is. But so you went to Florida, sorry?
Sorry, Florida, yeah. So we did some bit of the study tour over there, but there was a gap in the program, and I'm a NFL fan, massive Miami Dolphins fan, and found a window to get down to Miami and watch one of the games last year with Ruffy. So that was pretty cool. So...
have you done any coaching stuff with them, or like placement stuff in the States?
No, not well. When we're over there, it's through the Coaches Association. You sort of immerse yourself in different programs. And, it's beneficial. I've done a couple of them now, so I probably don't need to do any more of those per se. But some of them are facility tours, but some of them you can actually get quite intimate with other coaching groups and learn a bit more about what they do and hear them and see them operate. So those ones are beneficial.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's really interesting. Like you hear of a lot of coaches that go over and do it, and they come back more just confident with what we're actually doing in Australia.
100%. Yeah, and sometimes it confirms the path you're on as a coach, or sometimes you go, geez, we actually do things a lot better. The States is a volume thing. They've got a huge population. If one player's a bust, they get another player in, or we've got an onus to develop talent, which I think is a great way to go about it. But our coaching practices, I think, are probably ahead of some of theirs.
Unreal. Hey, Frase, incredible to catch up, mate. I've absolutely loved it. Can't wait to see what's next for you, mate. Would love to see you in that top chair one day. And if you need a runner or something, I'd love to put my hand up for that. Keep fit on the weekends. I reckon I'd be pretty good at that.
I think
role
you'd be
for you.
great at leadership and culture, mate. I think you'd be great for a culture.
Yeah, we'll see how we go. Mate, you're a star. I really appreciate it. And
Thanks,
genuinely thank you for all your love and support, like not only from when we're playing, but, staying in touch. I'd love you to have my number saved from now on. But, just love what you're doing, mate, and should be extremely proud.
Appreciate it, mate. I love what you're doing too.
You're a good man.
Thanks for having me.
Good stuff.